Well, Julie, good to see you, especially before the long weekend. And what a weekend it's going to be, but not so much on the gasoline side. And that's because we're really not seeing much in the way of anything on gasoline pricing at this point. And what we're actually getting, other than my grandson giving me a bit of a hard time, has been, trying to figure out which way the markets are going to go because they seem to be up and down almost on a daily basis, but by very small amounts. What is of more concern, I think, for all of us is the value of the Canadian dollar. The loonie continues to lose value. It takes now 140 pennies to buy a US dollar. That's worth about 24 cents a liter across the country. 25 if you're looking with HST, and about 23 if you're looking with if you're paying with GST, as we're in many Western provinces. So the real factor is what's behind this. Well, we know that the world has plenty of oil. We know that there's been no major upsets in the U.S. Gulf Coast with respects to things like hurricanes. We also know that there's been no real geopolitical tensions that, if anything, there's been de-escalation, certainly in the Middle East. All these things could be very bearish for energy prices, but what will not go down is the price of diesel. You need to keep an eye on that because that's where the price will start to increase by as much as 5 cents a liter per week over the next 4 to 5 weeks as we get to the dead of winter, as they say. And that means that that if you're paying $1.30, $1.32 for diesel, and heating oil we should also consider that as well. You could be at $1.70 by Christmas. So there will be an increase, as there always is seasonally. Diesel is a proxy not just for colder weather, but also used for heating oil and for a number of other products as well. So as we see gasoline prices move up, diesel prices tend to move in a very different direction. And some people will say, well, but diesel's just a lower part of the barrels. It's not really that expensive. It shouldn't be that expensive. The reality is that for diesel, a lot of the things that we're seeing here is that it's changed a lot. Low sulfur diesel, a number of factors have really limited diesel's old being relegated to the old days of when it was simply a product that no one really wanted to use. So we're actually changing that from time to time. All this really means is that prices will continue to rise for diesel. Prices will stabilize for gasoline. But going forward, we could see some pretty dramatic changes depending on the geopolitical tensions. Also, if there is some kind of deal worked out between Canada and the United States on, say, the United States rebuilding the Keystone XL, rather the Keystone XL pipeline that the Biden administration deconstructed after the previous Trump administration had put it in place. If this can happen in the next year, that would be 1.1, 1.2 million barrels potentially sold every single day. That would strengthen the Canadian dollar, strengthen our purchase power, and probably add about 30 billion bucks to net revenues that the federal and provincial government desperately need at a time in which we're heading into deficits. So I too was very interested in what happened with the sort of rumors what took place between the meeting between Carney and Trump, because obviously nothing happened. But on the sidelines, a number of things were probably discussed. Most importantly, most notably for our future, for our economy, would be the ability to sell another pipeline. And what does that really mean? Well, every pipeline, TMX being the good example, an extra half point increase in the growth of your Canadian economy. So make no mistake, pipelines are the solution. We need to get our energy to markets if we want to turn our economy around and come off the mat, as it were, with high deficits and low employment and low investment. We do have to make it very clear, though, and this is going to be the challenge for the Carney government. They're going to have to swallow themselves whole and make abundantly clear to the investment community around the world, Canada is a reliable, non-risky place to put your money. And when it comes to pipelines, assuming Carney's not playing games, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. If he is, that's a different matter, and it brings in a number of other geopolitical concerns within the Federation. But if he is serious, then we have to make it ironclad clear to investors around the world that we will never allow what we allowed back with the Trans Mountain Pipeline, that expansion approved by the federal government. They went through hoops to get it done. That would be the owner, Kinder Morgan, only to have the federal government and the provincial government, every Tom, Dick, and Harry out there take a shot at it, pot shots mostly, lawfare and all sorts of other strategies to, use every tool in the toolbox to frustrate the pipeline. What that did is that Kinder Morgan went back to the federal government and said, "This is your mess. We complied. You have an agreement. You broke that agreement. You owe us 6 billion bucks, and if you don't pay it up, we're going to sue you." And they would have lost. That is the Canadian government. So Rather than having a company come in and build something for $6 billion and do great things to the Canadian economy, you and I had to fork out $50 billion because of green shenanigans, where they were trying to frustrate a pipeline that was desperately needed, the rest of the world wants, for which it was just really a twinning of an existing pipeline. I can go further into this because I was heavily involved in 2018, 2019, 2020. It's one of the main reasons I left GasBuddy and went on my own to work here at Canadians for Affordable Energy to bring to light the fact that we were destroying and despoiling our energy resources and undermining affordability across the country. So, pipelines are very close to me, and they have a lot to do with how well our economy does. And don't take my word for it. In 1998, I wrote a report as a Liberal chair of the Committee on Gasoline Pricing. The first concern that Paul Martin and Jean Chrétien had was, am I going after the oil, the upstream, the oil pipelines? Am I going after the production? I said, absolutely not. Has nothing to do with that. But I was surprised. Why would they be concerned about, about pipelines? Well, because as Paul Martin put it, I can only get out of the debt if we start selling a lot more oil to places like the United States and around the world. And that was a very successful recipe then. We went from 1 to 2 million barrels a day. We need to go from 4 to 8 million barrels a day if we want to right this problem. On November 4th, in a few weeks, you and I are going to be talking about the Canadian deficit. And that deficit could be $100 billion. That's going to mean a major credit downgrade. It's going to, push away investors. We need to send a signal right now that we're going to address this. We could have a pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline, could be up and running as soon as the Americans can get their act together and President Trump can buy back all of the material that was sold by the Biden administration foolishly and put an end to this net zero nonsense that has been plaguing the finances of this country and potentially putting it in a very position where it could start to disintegrate, especially with the West saying there's no future in this country. I believe there is. I believe they believe it is. We need to do what's right for Canada, and what's right for energy sector is good by me, and I think every consumer in this country. So that's it for this week, Julie. I want to wish you and all our viewers here a very wonderful Thanksgiving, and more to talk about next week when we resume this great topic.